Hey guys, we're working on this 2017 International HX, and we're going to be changing out the turn signal slash wiper stock located on the left side of the steering column here. That's this big guy, and it's got an issue right now where the wiper function does not work. So we need to remove the column covers. There's a upper and lower cover. So right now we're just actually removing these little torque screws. I believe they're like a T25 or a 27. I don't exactly know what size, but it's one of those two. There's 3 screws, one located here, another one located down here, and then another one here. So I'm gonna take those out. I haven't done this job before, and I don't know exactly what I need to take apart, but hey, I'm here to do it so that you guys can watch and see. Might have to go try to get a trim tool and see if I can get this apart. Okay, the other thing is there's this collar that goes around here under the steering wheel. Like, I don't think I need to take the steering wheel off, but maybe I do. Because I've had them before where you can like get this to pop off and then slide it down. But the switch is like in the way pretty badly. I'm gonna try to take the steering wheel off. I believe that's what we're gonna have to do. Steering wheel off. This round sleeve here, it's just a one-piece sleeve. It probably needs to come off too, and then we can get the covers off, unfortunately. This might not be as bad as I think. So to remove this cover, you just literally pop it up and it comes up here. We've got, looks like a ground strap here that's for the horn. So if we take that off, we can remove this cover out of the road. And then we've got one big nut that's right here. It's got some paint marks on it. Somebody else might have been in here, not too sure. I'm just gonna clean these and then repaint it so that I mark where the steering wheel is in correlation to the shaft. And I'll probably put a mark on the nut as well. But we just wanna know roughly like where the steering wheel and the shaft are so that we can put it back on exactly where it was. Looks like we've got some threaded holes here that are gonna help us for using a puller. So we're going to try to set something up. I'm gonna get this cleaned up. We'll put some paint on it. Okay, so we're just gonna put a line approximately 12 o'clock. Or just roughly line them up. Could go any which way, just as long as we know where the shaft and the steering wheel need to meet up so that we can put it back in case the shaft isn't master splined, which I'm sure it's probably not. Okay, next thing we need to do, this is going to be obviously for our horn. This is probably going to be power, and if we touch this to ground, that's going to sound the horn off. So just keep in mind, doesn't really matter, you still want this honking all the time. I'm going to go get my puller. Actually, yeah, I'll go get the puller set and I'll find out what size nut this is. Let's see, what do we got here? 1 5/16 or 33 millimeter. Boom, just like that. 32 millimeter. I have a 33, but it's a bit sloppy. Okay, now that we've got that off, there's no other washers or anything. Let me just set that to the side. Yeah, I might have to get the whatchamacallit. All right, so we're threading in some 2-inch long 1/4 by 20 thread fasteners here for our puller. And pretty simple puller design. I might have to thread those in a little bit further. I don't want them stripped, but get these tightened down. This is ridiculously tight. Oh, did you hear that? All right, I guess we kind of should pay attention to where this disc is too. All right, so we got our little bezel cover. I'll call it the bezel. And it's sat about here. This protrudes through the hole in the steering wheel. I'd say these two dots are probably 12 o'clock, if I had to guess. The old 12 o'clock. So let's set that aside. Now, our cover just fell right off. Very nice. And see if we can get this. Oh yeah, that was it, baby. That was it. Okay, now we're cooking. Here's our switch. And there's an electrical connector that runs down here, goes underneath of this plastic cover, comes out here, and it looks like it snakes in behind this cover here. So let me just take a quick look. Oh yeah, we gotta take this cover off now. Okay, so there's two, I'm pretty sure these are supposed to be Torx. They're like little T20 or T25 Torx. But I have Phillips screws in here now. And once we get that out and we take the key out of the ignition, we should be able to hopefully get this out. I think this panel, this kick panel that goes over the ignition switch overlaps this other side panel that goes over the data link connector port. So let me just try to pull this out. Yep. And then we just gotta kind of weasel it around some hoses here. There we go. And it looks like there's our connections right here. All of the connections we need are right there. Then it zip ties to this, and then it runs down and up the steering column. So we're gonna undo these here. And then I think we're just gonna try to maybe fish the connectors up if they're small enough. If not, then we're gonna have to move this piece of plastic somehow. Okay guys, looks like you can see this gray wire goes up. That's, I'm guessing, for our horn, maybe something else. So this big connector is the one that we wanna undo. But actually, now that I think of it, these are just taped together. So I'm gonna have to cut the tape in a second here. There is a bolt that goes in here with a little thing, a strap, if you will, that holds the wiring harness, and it's 14 millimeter. So I take that off, get this thing separated. And I guess I gotta cut that tape. Okay, so here's the dilemma. We have this plastic sleeve that goes over the column body, and the wiring harness runs up underneath of it. Now, to get this piece off, it wraps completely around the other side, and same with the bottom. So I think what they want us to do is to basically take the intermediate steering shaft off, unbolt the column, and then once you get the mounting brackets out of the way, you can slide this thing down and off. But I don't want to do that. So there's a couple options we can do. You can either cut a slice in this and feed the wiring harness through and then tape it back up. You could cut the wiring down here somewhere, take this piece off so that the connector isn't in the way, and then on the new one, wire it back together. Or you could depin this connector and then repopulate it afterwards, which is what I'm going to do. So if you wanted to do my method, you're gonna need a depinning tool set, and you can get a cheap one on Amazon, probably sells them, or AliExpress, or Temu. And the size that we need is going to be 3.75 millimeters. Now this is a 13 millimeter length one, which is just fine. The connector body isn't that deep. So yeah, I tried it with this one. I'm just gonna see if this cheap toolkit will work as well. But if you take a close look, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but these are bullet connectors, and on the sides of them there are little locking tabs that spring open. So when it gets pushed through the hole, they spring open and it doesn't let the terminal come back out. So seeing as they're round, you just pick the appropriate sized terminal tool and you slide it over those little locking fins that pop out, and then it'll let you push this back through the hole. You obviously, if you do want to do it this way, you need to mark the connector somehow and take a bunch of pictures to be absolutely sure of where the terminals go back. Otherwise, if you mess that up and don't put them back in the right place, there's a good chance that you'll probably short something out and blow some fuses, and it can just be a complete headache. So this is more for the skilled person out there that's watching this. And I'm sure most of you are probably just going to cut a slit in that. So I was thinking about it. If I were to cut a slit in it, I would definitely make sure that it was done as clean as possible and then tape it all back up. But I'm not going to do that. So. Okay, so to depin, the wire, you can push it in and out just ever so slightly. We want to make sure the wire is pushed inwards towards the connector at first, and that's going to relieve any tension on those little fins that are that spring out. And then you take the appropriate size bullet terminal tool and you slide it on in there, and then when it's all the way pushed down, you should be able to wiggle this thing and take it out. These cheap terminal tools that I have are just ever so slightly too big. So I'm going to have to try with this one again, which works just fine. So this is actually the Blue Point set, and the part number of the terminal for this specific application is going to be TT1209. Okay, so to get this off, on the other side here, you'll see that there's a 4mm Allen key bolt, I believe. Wherever it is, oh, right in there. And then there's one on the top as well. Okay, so yep, 4mm. We're just gonna take these out. I need an extension. Okay, there's our assembly. We're at the halfway mark. Now we need to depin this. I guess we can mount it first and just make sure. And then, yeah, we'll mount it, tighten it down, depin this, feed the wiring back through, repopulate the connector back to where it was, and proceed with the installation. Okay, we've got it depinned. I've thrown some electrical tape around the end just to keep all the wires together. Hopefully successfully feed this thing down here. We might have to pre-bend the wires a little bit, try to guide it down. Of course, it wants to get all caught up on wherever we're sending it. Okay, I got it now. And now we just want to mount this thing. I think that goes, where's the holes on this thing? can't tell if it's supposed to be, it can't be there. It has to be like here. But then it wants to sit down further. I can feel it. Okay, so we got our little 4mm machine screws in there. Tighten those down. I don't have a torque spec for you. It's just pretty snug, but you don't want to like completely crank the living hell out of it. And then now that we've got our wiring routed and everything, we're just going to go ahead and repopulate that connector so that we can continue on. All right, so I've marked on the connector with a red dot what is what. The connector, if you look around the outside, it's uniform and symmetrical, except for the center, the actual cavities. You'll notice that most of them are circles, but then there's a couple that are just like a half a circle. So I've marked which corners match up to what, so that I can then go ahead and repopulate this connector with the appropriate wiring colors. And it's just simple as just pushing this back in, and then it'll click into place, and you just make sure that it's snug, and you just take your time and go along. And like I say, if you know, you could just take a picture with your phone and make sure that you know where every wire color goes, and make sure that they go back exactly where they came out of, and you'll be good. All right, we'll just do a quick test here. Make sure our turn signals function, which they do, and our wipers, which they do. So everything's pinned up good. I guess we could check washers, but I know that I got everything pinned in good. So that's pretty much good for testing. It's always good to just test if you can easily, just to be sure that everything's cool before you spend all the time to put it back together. So now we'll proceed, I guess, with, we'll zip tie this up out of the road, get our horn hook back up. All right, that's for the wiring harness bracket. Then we'll get some light up underneath here and get that zip tied up. I'm gonna leave the horn unhooked until the very end, once we get the steering wheel and all that on there, just because I don't want it beeping. But that pretty much just goes up underneath of there, and just throw like a zip tie. Actually, the panel will go on there. I'll zip tied to this other wiring harness that's underneath of there, but I'll leave that for now. Let's continue with our steering column. So the next thing we got to do is put our covers on. So we'll grab those. All right, so we've got these guide dowel pin pieces that stick out of here. You can see on the plastic covers that we've got these ears, and that's where those need to lock into. So just carefully start the top one, and it should just sort of pop into place. Make sure you're fully seated there. Grab the bottom one, and we'll get our tool ready here with a screw. Make sure all your seams and edges overlap well. You can see here, if you look right here, there's sort of a cutout where one goes inside of the other, just to give us a better fitment. And then we'll go ahead and start our screws now. All right, so I believe this goes on here like so. Maybe. All right, and then we've got the spring followed by this doohickey here. And then against one, that kind of goes on like that. And then I guess we got to put our steering wheel on after that. Yeah, so just as I suspected, the splines are they're not master splined. So you got to mark where it is when you go to put that on. And then what we're going to do now is just get our nut started on there. Just before I go ahead and torque that down, I just wanted to make sure that our horn actually works and it isn't somehow shorted out. All right, works as it should. That's perfect. Now we just got to torque this nut down. Now, I really actually don't know what the torque is supposed to be. So I'm gonna kind of just guesstimate what I think it should be. Could have just I guess marked roughly where it is, but so that's at about 50 foot-pounds. And that feels pretty good. 55, somewhere between 50 and 60, I think is probably a safe bet. Okay, now we've got the cover left, and we've just got this little tang that we've got to hook our wire onto. And then once that's hooked on, we just line up the little pegs. Give that a little push. Okay, so now we got to weasel this thing in here. Kind of got to get it around our clutch. And there's also another air line that's in there too. They make it so you can just barely get it in there without goofing around with it. And make sure your carpets are all clear, everything's clear there. Try to get this thing lined up with the holes the best that you can. And then you just basically push it into place like that. And we just gotta throw a couple screws in the bottom, and I'd say we're pretty well there. All right, guys, that's just a video on how to remove and replace the turn signal slash wiper switch on your 2017 International HX. Hopefully this video helped you, and if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. Be glad to try to answer any of them that you might have. Don't forget to subscribe, helps us out more than you know. We'll see you in the next one.